Welcome everybody to the book launch for Eugene Stickland's No Harm Done, 3 plays about medical conditions. I am indeed Laureen Sheba, publisher at Derville and Uproot Books. So good to see you here. So we're not together on site as planned, as June already pointed out, bummer, but we're nonetheless together to celebrate a really interesting book. We have readings, we have snacks, I have chips. I don't know what you've got there, but it's not pretzels and beer as we'd expected, but grab yourself a snack. We have door prizes, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And a bonus is we have guests from across the country who contributed to the book, who we wouldn't have had here if we'd been on site. So, thank goodness for small blessings. First, a land acknowledgement on this beautiful Indigenous summer day. We gratefully join together from traditional lands across what is known as Canada. The Indigenous peoples of Southern Alberta include the Siksika, the Piikani and Kainai of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Dene Tsuut'ina, the Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Wesley, Iefka Nakota First Nations, and the Region 3 Métis Nation of Alberta. Thank you, Shelf Life Books, for hosting this event as part of Derville's 5-book fall season. 5 books, ask me if I'm exhausted, but really happy with the results. Especially today, celebrating No Harm Done. Thank you also to Canadian Heritage through the Canada Book Fund and Alberta Media Fund for their support as well. As far as timing goes, we might be here for an hour, or maybe even an hour and a half. Let's see how it goes, shall we? My professional mandate as a publisher is to publish authors who bring new knowledge and wisdom to the world. We have 3 main series where authors do just exactly that. The True Cases series, Book 8, After the Force is on the Press, by law enforcement officers, and there are some stunning tales there, I tell you, of their investigations. The Indigenous Spirit of Nature series, the recent book in that series, of course, being the best-selling stories of Métis women. And in the Every River Lit series, Rich Teyrou's River Troll was the most recent book, and now No Harm Done. No Harm Done provides 3 distinct experiences. We have the plays, we have commentaries about the plays, and we also have a playwright's guide. June has put a link in the chat, I think, to the hotspot for you to purchase the book, and even signed copies, as I understand it. Eugene and I are delighted that many of the spokespeople and experts who wrote commentaries for the plays are here with us today. Welcome, you guys. Dr. Julia Gray, I'm not sure if Julia has come into the session. Dagmar Jameson, who is here. Dr. William Stell, who is here, Crystal Phillips, who is here, and Dr. Binhu, who is also here. Erin Coates is here as well to talk about the ensemble audiobook production, which actually has, it sounds just amazing. Door prizes, did I mention them? Here's the deal. In the chat, come up with a question for Eugene or any of the panelists, and I'll enter you to win one of 3 sets of door prizes. And what we have these enchanting Uproot book titles, Chassis is Enchantment, which came out earlier this year, and Vistas of the West, which is last year's book. So please ask a question, and I'll make note of who you are. And at the end, I'll announce who the winners are. And I'll mail out the books. You don't even have to go out of your house. So now I'm delighted to introduce Eugene Stickland. Born in Regina, Eugene completed an MFA in theater at York in playwriting and dramaturgy. He moved to Calgary in 1994 at the time of his first major production at Alberta Theatre Projects of the hit play Some Assembly Required, which went on to have over 100 productions worldwide. And I digress, excuse my digression, but this is how I met Eugene. And this is back in 1994, where we both had studios in the Calgary famous grain exchange building, if anybody knows the grain exchange. And, there we were kind of slumping around there in the grain exchange and having our interesting careers. And so he was looking for a designer for his book, Some Assembly Required. And so happens that I had a little shingle outside my door, Sundial Media. And of course I was a designer. So we started working together on this. And I tell you what, it was really handy typesetting this play way back then, because I used the same layout and typeface for No Harm Done 25 years later. So there you go. After Some Assembly Required, Eugene wrote 9 more plays during a 10-year residency at Alberta Theatre Project. Following his time at ATP, among other things, he published his first novel, The Piano Teacher, which received the W.O. Mitchell Award. Eugene?
Hi. Thanks for being here, everyone. I feel a little bad that we're not out at the container space swatting mosquitoes. I guess it's too late for them, but I guess there are good things about technology too. And here we all are celebrating this book, and I'm celebrating all the people who have helped with it. And I thank you all for being here. Nice to see Chris Hunt, one of my favorite actors, on the cover of Some Assembly Required. I'm sure he's watching today because he's so supportive. So here's a book called No Harm Done. This is a sort of an improbable book in a way, because it contains 3 plays that I never thought would be published. And I didn't really think would ever get done again. But now maybe there's hope for that. And that's not a selfish reason that I hope that they would get done. But if they can serve the purpose of fostering some kind of dialogue about the diseases I talk about in these plays, and maybe create some more awareness or some more fundraising around them, then I think that would be awesome. The 3 plays are, let me read you the first paragraph of the book, because that will save me a lot of making stuff up as I go along, okay? Isn't it funny how it works out? I never set out to write medically themed plays, let alone 3 of them. And I would never have envisioned a book such as this as part of my oeuvre, but here it is. And here you are, holding the book in your hands, reading these words. And I hope you are in a few days, when you buy it from Shelf Life Books. And so what can I assume about you, dear reader? Maybe you are a student of some aspect of drama or theater. Maybe you are in the medical profession in some way. Or maybe you're a fundraiser, or someone who has been touched by one of the conditions I explore in this play, or perhaps someone you love has had to deal with one of these afflictions. There are so many possibilities. Clearly, this book is meant to serve a lot of masters, as they say. I hope that I have done a good job and that you will find something of value in these pages, whatever your reason for being here. I was going to say that there's a lot of prose in this book, and fortunately I also write prose, so it's an interesting mixture of prose and then going back to the drama. The first play that's in the book is called Closer and Closer Apart, and it's maybe the only kind of real play that we would find in the book. It was commissioned by Lunchbox Theatre by my friend Joanne DeLeo, and we did it in the conventional setting of the Lunchbox Theatre. It was directed by my old artistic partner at ATP, Bob White. It featured Grant Reddick, who we have waiting in the wings, who was going to read these same words that he did on stage 20 years ago. What an honor to have Grant. And with him will be Allison Lynch. Allison is connected to the play, and I'll tell you how. She was part of a revival of the play that did a little tour throughout Calgary. Went to several churches, the cathedral, the Anglican Cathedral downtown, out to St. Mary's University. And because of that, I ended up being their playwright in residence for years. And it ended at an event at the Hotchkiss Brain Institute called, it was Alzheimer's Awareness Week. So it was used as sort of a springboard to, to foster some discussion about Alzheimer's. And at that was quite a storied event. There were experts from all over the world, and doctors, researchers, therapists, caregivers, all kinds of people. And we did pretty well. And I should also mention that in that, otherwise I'll be in trouble after my marriage has ended, but my former wife, Carrie, was in the play with Grant, Carrie Schiffler. I subsequently wrote a full-length version of this play for Theatre Network in Edmonton, my friend Bradley Moss, and we did it up there. And when it came time to do the book, we decided that because they're all kind of short plays, we would go with the shorter version. And there's one monologue from the full-length version. It's not super long, but it means a lot to me. It came from something that my mother said once upon a time, and I put it in the play. And then after that, my mother passed away, and I was asked to do her eulogy back in Regina. And so here, as a bonus for being kind enough to drop in, that you guys will hear this, who are at this launch, and no one else in the world may ever hear it. So this is towards the end of the play, where Joe is getting more and more uncertain of what's going on, but he has these moments of lucidity. And I suppose I say in the book that maybe that's wishful thinking on my part, that underneath the kind of befuddled, confused surface of the Alzheimer's mind, that maybe there's still a brilliant, passionate mind working underneath. So here's this monologue that I wrote and said at my mother's funeral. It's an issue of space. You start out on the farm, that great vast prairie, to run and tumble in, the endless horizon and the great dome of the sky, boundless and unfettered. But your mother calls you back into the house, and it's a big, fine house with many rooms, sheltering the family, the home. And then you muddle around, and the space around you expands or contracts to the seasons of your life, your enterprise. Yet, at a certain point, you can feel the walls begin to close around you, from a house to an apartment, to a room in a home, until finally, we are left in just the smallest of spaces, a wooden box, and the prairie opens up, and you are lowered down into it, home again, the circle complete. So that's your bonus monologue today. Thank you. I got a little choked up there thinking about my mom. Ironically, she was okay when I wrote this play. She was about 80 then, but she did develop Alzheimer's after the fact. At least I knew kind of how to cope with someone with Alzheimer's, because there's certain things that you should do, certain things that you shouldn't. But we will have excerpts from the play after this segment, which is at the end about 7 o'clock tonight, if you timing dinner. No, just kidding. I'm going to talk a bit more about each of the plays, and then we're going to hear from our experts, and back to Lori, and then I'll come back with Grant and Ellison. The next two plays, Fade to Light, which I wrote for an event that Dagmar organized, and then the other one, The Last Dance, which I wrote for an event that Crystal organized, are both, you might say, writing on demand. They had a theme. Dagmar's was degenerative blindness. Dagmar has Stargardt's disease, which means she doesn't have any vision at the center part of her vision. And The Last Dance was in research of Dr. Bin, who's in support of his research in Parkinson's disease. So in the book, at the end, Lori had asked me to write a writer's guide, and I wrote a little section called Writing on Demand. And I wrote a couple paragraphs that are so funny, I have to share them with you, okay? So this is writing on demand. Somewhere across town, in a well-appointed living room of a fine house, or in the boardroom of a not-for-profit organization. A committee is being formed, an event organized, a gala evening envisioned, the generation of much needed funds anticipated. What will it be? A golf tournament, a fashion show? And then someone says, why don't we commission a play and have a gala evening in the theater? The next thing you know, your name is on a whiteboard or a flip chart, along with several others. Then it is remembered that one of the names swears way too much, and another is a terrible writer, and another drinks, and another is actually dead. And soon the only name that remains is your own name, and soon enough they come looking for you. Well, it didn't exactly happen that way. I knew Dagmar through mutual friends, and I knew Crystal from Cafe Bino. But when they approached me with their idea for a gala, I was certainly very interested and happy to help out. And by the way, they paid me. So both events were great, but it is a little different just writing whatever comes from your imagination compared to, say, writing a play that has something to do with blindness and has something to do with Parkinson's. The one thing I did figure out is if we really wanted a lecture on either of those diseases, don't ask me because I don't know much about them. We've got experts here who could lecture for hours and hours. People wanted to be entertained, right? Later on in that same section, I say the thing you got to remember about gala audiences, fundraising audiences, is they're all half cut by the time they get into the theater because they're being poured lots of drinks, so they'll write big checks at the end of the night. So you can't just hit them with a real dry, expository thing about a disease. They would be unhappy then. You got to keep them happy, and you need to find some way to have laughter. So that's some advice for you. Fade to Light was part of a gala event at Hotel Arts in Calgary, and it was part of a larger evening called Dining in the Dark. And this was a fascinating event in which we were all served a formal meal with wine pairings and everything, but we were blindfolded. And this is my little tidbit of fascinating information that sighted people probably never think about. Even an experienced wine drinker sometimes cannot tell the difference between a red and a white if they're blindfolded. It's hard to believe, right? Now, I know some extremely experienced wine drinkers. I want to put that to the test some night, but yeah, it's just how much we're informed visually, even in our tastes and by the meals that we have. So there were blindfolds, and that allowed me to do something really interesting, I thought, and that was to create a radio play instead of a stage play. Like we were in a ballroom of a hotel, right? So you only have a little, not really a stage, just a platform, and you don't have lights and you don't have all those other things. Once you put a blindfold on, then you can do anything. You can go anywhere you want in the world. And I just want to read you, hang on, I hope I have it marked here. Okay, talk among yourselves. I think I have it here somewhere. Okay. And so when it was starting, right, I said, finally, the magic. With the audience blindfolded, we could paint pictures and create scenes we never could have done on a stage at a real theater, let alone on a small raised platform in a hotel banquet room. It took me back to plays I'd written earlier in my career when we had such things, radio plays. People think radio plays are limited in scope, but in fact, it's just the opposite. In a radio play, you can go from Les Rues de Paris to the bottom of the deep blue sea to the rings of Saturn if you choose. You're only limited by your own imagination. So that allowed us to have a couple on a park bench in a big verdant park in the middle of a city, bring in a windstorm, the tree boughs blowing in the wind, and a thunderstorm coming in, and all the while we have the beautiful voice of the narrator who again was Grant Reddick, who we have waiting in the wings patiently, and he's going to read the final monologue from that play, which is one of my favorite things. The other members of that cast were Tony Binns and Jennifer Roberts, who are really known more to be stand-up comics, but I like their voices, so we used them in that production, and I guess I directed it. Such breathtaking direction, you know, with a radio play, it's a little easier. You don't have to move people around. And then there was The Last Dance, and as I say, I know Crystal from Beano, and she and members of her committee, and Crystal at the time was the head honcho at an organization called the Branch Out Foundation, which has done wonderful work in Calgary to support all kinds of medical research. And it's an organization I have tremendous regard for. Now, here's what happened. People ask playwrights especially, I don't know if they bother with novels, but people come up to you and say, so where do you get your ideas? And then you leave you at that point, because we don't like that question. We just get them, right? Like, leave me alone. Or else what's worse is when they say, now I've got a good idea for a play. Yeah, like all your others have been so feeble, but this cost accountant has come up with a great idea for a play. So we don't really like those questions, but this is a kind of an interesting story of where this play came from. First of all, it came from Crystal asking me to write it, but secondly, it came from a real life experience, and this doesn't always happen. So I was home one day in this living room, and my childhood sweetheart got a hold of me on Facebook, Deb. Debbie was her full name, but we called her Deb, and she and I had gone out since grade 7. Oh my God. I went to Kresge's, which is a little 5 and dime store in Regina, and I bought her a ring in grade 7. It was 79 cents. And I can remember going, God, can I afford this? And pulling out, I think I had a $1 bill, and I gave her the ring. And we went out for a while. We broke up. We went out. We broke up all the way through high school. And when it came time for the senior prom, you know, the grad dance, we went together only for reasons of nostalgia, not that there was anything romantic happening with us. Anyway, I hadn't seen her since that night of the prom. And so she found me on Facebook and asked me if we could talk. And I said, and if she could phone me. And I said, yeah. So then she called. First words out of her mouth, I'm sorry I dumped you at the prom. 40 years later, honestly, I said, oh, it's okay. You know, I think I've worked through it, the rejection and everything. But then what she was calling about was much more serious. She had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and was dying. And she wanted to have one more conversation with me. And as you can imagine, that was a very intense conversation. And it's odd, the minute that Crystal talked about this in Parkinson's, I know they're in the same family of diseases. And I thought, well, I could just sort of transpose the story with Deb to 2 different characters and create a play. And that's what I did. And I was really happy with how it worked. No one wants to see a playwright on stage. We're not supposed to be there. We're supposed to be back in our room. So I made my character into a world famous rock star, which you can kind of, you get, right? You can see that's not too big a stretch. And we had a lovely production that featured Krista Stevens and Jared Blake, and was directed by my old pal, Joe Norman Shaw. And it's about this rock star comes home to visit his childhood sweetheart and then discovers that she has Parkinson's, and they kind of go through that. One of the great things that happened was Krista, who had just acted in the play, was in this event outside of the Sea Space Theater at this bigger event called Your Brain on Heart. And this lady came up to her and she said, I think it's wonderful that you're able to act even having Parkinson's disease. And Krista took a hit of her wine and she goes, I don't have Parkinson's, I was acting. So I think she did a pretty good job, because she, she certainly had somebody fooled. The last part of the book, after those 3 plays, then is the writer's guide. And I put something in there. I guess I hope that people will maybe write a play someday if they would read this. Maybe that's why they would read it. But just before I get to that part, at the end of my little section on writing on demand, I put in what I call the playwright's prayer. And Aaron Coates would understand this because he's written plays. Because especially with something like an event like Dagmar's or Crystal's, it's all thrown together so fast on always a tight budget, and you're going to yourself, oh my God, how is this going to be? And you're helpless, right? Like you're standing at the back of the theater and the lights are going down and you are almost vomiting because you're so nervous, not for even so much for yourself, but for those poor actors that we put out on the stage. So this is the prayer. Dear gods, please, please, please let this work. Let the actors remember their lines. Let there be no technical foul-ups. Let there be one good laugher in the audience who gets my jokes. Just this one time, dear gods, and I swear I will lead a better life in your service from this day forward. Amen. And I'm happy to report that in each of these 3 plays, we got away with it. You know, I know that both events made money for the organizations, and I know that Closer and Closer Apart was a highly regarded play. So I'm so happy to have the 3 of them back into the world. And I hope that you enjoy reading them. If you're an educator, I think the 2 smaller plays could be used for studio work. And I still think that there could be a full-length production of Closer and Closer Apart. You get Allison Lynch to write the music for you, and you'll be in good hands. But more on Allison later, and more on Grant when we get back to them. So according to what I think is our schedule now, I'm going to turn it back to Lori, and she's going to introduce all of our guests, and then I'm going to come back after that with Grant and with Allison, and we're going to have some actual readings from these plays. Not too long, not too long. Don't panic. Okay, Lori.
Hey, thanks, Eugene. That was really good. I'm really glad you managed to find some excellent passages to read. And I would say that the book is full of those excellent passages. I really enjoyed working on it. So I'm going to first of all introduce Dagmar Jameson. Dagmar's career purpose as a life coach is focused on resilience and healing inner conflict. I'm going to let Dagmar tell you a little bit more about herself, but I'd like to point out that the play Fade to Light was commissioned by Dagmar, along with the Insight Dining in the Dark Committee in aid of the Foundation Fighting Blindness. So Dagmar, are you with us? There you are.
Yes. Thank you very much, Lorraine, for that lovely introduction. And being insightful is very important to me. So first of all, I'd like to thank Eugene for being so brilliant and insightful. But most of all, I feel so grateful for the people in my life, the committee that we collaborated to put on this event at Hotel Arts called Insight Dining in the Dark, that inspired me to hire or to commission Eugene to write the play Fade to Light. I feel so grateful for everyone that supported and inspired this evening that became absolutely wonderful and opened my eyes to so many things. And when you get a chance to read this book, you will see exactly what I mean. Mm-hmm. What I will say about Eugene is how grateful I am of his brilliance, and he really understood. He had such insight in writing this play that I was just in absolute awe. The foreshadowing through the events, the dialogue, and the story in itself was absolutely brilliant. I can't say brilliant enough, but what it meant to me when I first heard the thunder, it related me to the times when, after I was diagnosed to lose my sight and diagnosed legally blind, whenever I was put into a new environment where I either was meeting a new person that didn't know I was blind, or embarking on a new journey, or put into an environment, I would get that feeling in my stomach, just like the rumbling of the thunder. And I felt that that foreshadowing was so relevant to me. And then throughout the play, when the beautiful melodic piano, and every once in a while it skipped a tune. Again, it's how we live with adversity and how frightening it can be at times to be faced with these challenges that we have to deal with. And Eugene got that. He understood that. How? I don't know, but he understood the story that goes on in our minds about who we are. Of course, we want to fit in. Everybody wants to fit in. Everybody wants to be popular and thought of as competent and perceived as a capable, competent person. But when we deal with adversity, there are certain things that we try to skirt around. And in the dialogue that Eugene presented through the play, I felt he touched on a lot of those points that I struggle with at times. I didn't tell him anything about me. He just seemed to know. He was so insightful. And so I feel so grateful to Eugene and the actors in projecting the essence of what it is like to be blind. And after the event was over, the experience that all the guests had, sitting in the dark, listening to the radio play, not only that, the Insight Dining event where they ate in the dark, blindfolded, I was just excited to see all the emails that came in the next day where people were explaining to me, wow, I really understand what it is like for you. And in many ways, many people face adversity. So it not only touched people that were losing their sight, but it also touched people that dealt with adversity. So I encourage you to pick up the book and read the play, especially the one that I love the most, Fade to Light. Of course, all the rest of them are as insightful and brilliant in their own way. But I am so thankful, Eugene, for your brilliance and for being so insightful and understanding what people that are dealing with adversity, such as blindness, deal with.
Thank you, Dagmar. Would you like to be my publicist?
Yes, you very well.
Good idea, Eugene. Welcome to the team, Dagmar.
Yeah.
I'm
Thanks so much,
I'm
Dagmar.
sure that'll all work out really well. Oh, as soon as I admit somebody here who has come in from probably a different time zone, hi, Cole. I'd like to introduce Dr. William Stell. Dr. Stell was also involved with the production of Fade to Light. And I love the way he ended up his essay by saying, out of darkness, fade to light. Quite beautiful, quite meditative. Dr. Stell has been a vision scientist for over 60 years and spends most of his time trying to understand how we perceive light, how the retina senses and decodes images of scenery, faces, electronic devices, and all sorts of other things we see. So in the book, Bill, if you don't mind me just reading a little bit here, you say that research on Stargardt's and other inherited retinal disorders is very active in Canada. We may not know exactly how to fix this, but we can be confident that we will know before too terribly long. So my question is, what's your latest discovery, Dr. Stell?
Thank you very much, Lori, and thank you and Eugene for welcoming me to be part of this production and this book, and Dagmar for bringing me into it in the first place. I was working with the Foundation Fighting Blindness as their research director at the time when this all came about, and this book offered a wonderful opportunity for me to revisit those days and the excitement that we had. So I have not personally been involved in research on Stargardt or most other retinal disorders. It's unfortunate that Yves Sauvé, who is such an expert and who wrote such a beautiful piece in this book, wasn't able to be here with us for this occasion. But what I can say is that research to develop treatments to either prevent or to cure vision disorders such as Stargardt disease, such research is going ahead very, very rapidly, not from the point of view of those who have these disorders, unfortunately. It seems as if it takes forever, but the progress that's been made in the 40 years, 35 years since I started to be involved in the activities of Fighting Blindness Canada, the progress is amazing. The two things that I see as being the most promising are ultimately the development of ways to transplant in new cells to replace the ones that are sick and dying due to an inherited disease. That means to replace either the rod and cone photoreceptors, which are the ones whose genes are defective that cause this family of diseases, and the associated tissue called retinal pigment epithelium, whose job, among other things, is to sustain the life of the rods and cones. And it's a mishap in this interaction that causes Stargardt disease, and that brings about the consequences that Dagmar has so eloquently laid forth for us. In the absence of that, the two things that are most promising are, first of all, electronic prostheses. So it's now possible to put a little electronic chip by surgery, to put an electronic chip onto the retina and equip that chip with an array of tiny electrodes, which can be stimulated in response to input from a video translation of the visual scene. So what's out there causes a video image that's translated into an array of electrical stimuli, which makes some kind of representation of what's out there that a normal person would see. Such devices are in use, and one called the Argus 2 has been tested in Canada, and I don't know whether it's actually available for use in Canada, but it should be shortly if it's not already. There are some very serious limitations to what such a device can do, and although some of those may be overcome by technological advances in the coming decades, I think it's not, from my point of view as a neurobiologist concerned with how the retina works, it's far from the ideal situation. So until we can transplant in new rods and cones and have them connect and survive, the next best is to take advantage of the fact that when the rods and cones get sick and die, the rest of the retina is still pretty much okay, at least for a while. So we have methods now of a kind of gene therapy to put genes for light reception into the remaining retinal cells. And this field is called optogenetics. So
What is it called? Can you repeat that?
Optogenetics.
Optogenetics. Wow.
So a gene puts a gene is introduced into the retinal cells, and that gene codes for light receptive molecules. So it makes those cells, which used to depend on input from the rods and cones, it makes them themselves light responsive. And this is now being tested in clinical trials in Europe and the United States, and I think it has great promise.
All right.
So,
Well, thank you so much.
I think we are indeed heading out of darkness and into light.
Oh,
thank
beautiful.
you very much for letting me be
thank
here.
you. Thank you so much. When was the last time you read a play and then ended up with this kind of information plopped right on your lap? Thanks so much, Dr. Stell. I'd like to now introduce Crystal Phillips. Crystal is executive director and co-founder of the Branch Out Foundation, whose aim it is to push the status quo and lead the way for innovation and alternative solutions to neurological disorders. She's also a natural nutritionist, public speaker, former national level speed skater, and thrives drug-free with multiple sclerosis. Crystal? In your essay, let me ask you a question here. In your essay, Reflection on the play, The Last Dance, here we've got on page 163, if anybody's following along, you say, at the Cafe Beano, of course, where you and Eugene met and where we can all meet Eugene just about any old time, we developed an idea to create a play on Parkinson's disease. Eugene would write the play, hire and train an actor/actress, and we would feature the play at a fundraising event. So a few months later, that 10-minute idea turned into a sold-out event called Your Brain on Art. So can you tell us about Brain on Art?
Yeah, thank you so much. And hi, everyone. It's great to see all your faces. So as it's been mentioned, I met Eugene at Cafe Beano. And although we came up with this idea of having a play, it's the first time I've even heard of something like this. I actually think it was truly inspired by Dagmar and the play that she did, the event that she ran, turned it into this incredible fundraiser. And that 10-minute conversation inspired by Dagmar was not only turned into a sold out event, but it also turned into $60,000 fundraised to advance more research into neuroscience. And like you said in my intro, this neuroscience and the Branch Out Neurological Foundation is focused on new innovative technologies and some of the less conventional non-pharmaceutical approaches to healing neurological disorders. Whether, we've actually looked at projects like even optogenetics. So we've also done research in brain aging disorders, Parkinson's, progressive disorders like that, as well as multiple sclerosis, which is a disease that is very close to home because I have it. So at that coffee shop, Eugene and I were talking about the possibility of creating a play and using this form of art to increase awareness for neurological disorders, awareness for the Branch Out Neurological Foundation, and of course, to raise money. And this event also has been 3 years now, and it's always been sold out. The first year, the theme, I guess this was the first year, and the theme was theater. We also had another part to the event where we paired neuroscientists that were funded by the Branch Out Foundation. They partnered with artists. They would have a conversation, and the artists would paint pictures and drawings that inspired them based on the research that was funded. And then we had the theater as our first other art form beyond painting. we had another Your Brain on Art. The second one, the art form was music. Last year, we had to, just like every event, turn it into a virtual event. And that was all based on paintings, but we also had a live painting. And a hint for the next one, I think the art form might be based on food and the art within food. So if we've got any foodies in the crowd, that's what that's about. The fact that this 10-minute idea again turned into this amazing event, it kickstarted something that's now an annual event, something that has cumulatively raised well over $200,000, has funded over 10 new neuroscience research projects. But it's also continued in this book form, so that who knows where the limits are of what that 10-minute idea can get to. And it's another great reminder that no matter who you talk to at the coffee shop or wherever you are in the world, it's pretty incredible when you get to that, just that one extra layer of, beyond the polite surface conversation, to understand what this special skills are, or that amazingness in every person. And it's such a privilege to have gotten past that layer with you, Eugene, having both been regulars at Cafe Beano, to really unleash this amazing project that continues to build momentum and make impact from here on out. And I'm so excited to see where it's going to be going from here. So thank you, Dagmar, for inspiring Eugene and I's first conversation. And then of course to Eugene and everyone that was involved in building this play, as well as this book. So thank you, everybody. And it's nice to see all of you.
Well, thanks so much, Crystal. It's overall inspiring, isn't it? Because it was you guys who inspired the book indirectly. Wonderful. So next I'm going to introduce Dr. Bin Hu. Dr. Hu is a professor in the Department of Clinical Neurosciences at the University of Calgary. His interest in Parkinson's disease is about how sensory cues, particularly music, can be used to help Parkinson's patients recover their motor function. So Dr. Hu, I'm fascinated with the music-based program you've developed called Ambulus Sono that can substantially improve patients' clinical condition. I hope that you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren. And first of all, I want to congratulate Eugene, Dagmar, and Crystal, and others to inspire this project overall. I have never met so many writers and people interested in medicine, art in my life in Calgary. Okay, so what I want to just say a few words about why the things what you guys are doing are important. Number one, I got into this music and Parkinson project is largely because of Oliver Sacks. So you probably know his name. He was in Calgary and we know each other and we have communicated for many, many years. You have to give Oliver Sacks credit, who is the first person has popularized a medical phenomenon in Parkinson's disease, in which some of these patients, they can't walk, okay, but they can dance. And when music is on, they can walk normally. So this is an anecdotal observation, but that was Oliver Sacks actually put it into an art form through his awakening and later musicophilia. So it has a huge impact on the literature community and as well as on the medical community. So, but what I have been interested in is that this phenomenon, Parkinson patients responding to music, it is very transient. Okay, so when the music stops, and then it reverted back to this motionless, we call it a kinetic state. So the impetus at that time is to find out first why, why this Parkinson patients responding so strongly to music. And number two, to develop a technology that can be used in human. And third, to find a way to prolong this music effect on motor, such that you can actually modulate the disease progression even as a prevention. Okay, so this research has been going on, I think, to 16 years. I was fortunate, started from the day one. We have received fundings from federal, provincial, and up to the state, the grants. And to my knowledge, nowhere else in the world has a program can attract such long sustained funding. Okay, so the program actually has been implemented in different countries, and totally we have over a couple of thousand patients have been tried. Okay, so in essence is that, so the idea is that if you look at music effect, the strongest music effects on the brain is not just if you like music, you just listen every day. It's in those children who start playing piano around age 6. So their brain has incurred tremendous structural change. So it is the most, I think, the most strong stimuli that can change the brain structure, or we know is the plasticity. It is the most profound example of brain plasticity is the piano players. So far we had the data. So the question is then, how are you going to apply this similar concept in Parkinson patients? So I designed this program is essentially a sensor that patient wearing over their knee, and then it connect to an app that controls the size of your walking. So essentially, if you walk, if your steps is too small, there will be no music to come out. It's like a piano. You didn't play the wrong key or whatever. Only if your steps are bigger than a threshold we set up, and music will come up. So we selected a library of music, and it's very how we say motivational. It is not just the rhythm. Rhythm is only one component of it. Some of these are operas, some of these are popular music, and etc. So what we found is this. Okay, they like it tremendously, but they like it for different reasons. It's like in the general population, usually we have people who do not know how to use walk as exercise, or they don't want to walk. They're just a little bit sedative, or they can't because of physical limitations. Is that right? So then, according to this, each group, roughly one third. You can design particular playlist, and then to help them to get mobile. Okay, for example,
that's very interesting. We've talked together, Ben and I have talked together about how we might even enrich audiobook experiences through music, through enhancing the audiobooks with music, to find a use for this within the very interesting ambulosonotherapy, haven't we? So
yeah, I think this audiobook
something we may be able to progress with.
Yeah,
and interestingly, Aaron Coates did the audiobook narration, and this is something that he may even have some thoughts on. So thank you so much, Ben, for your excellent description of your work. And I'd like to introduce now Aaron Coates. Aaron took on the task, of course, of directing the ensemble cast for production of the plays in an audiobook format. And the audiobook performance is now just going through post-production. I'm working on it, and should appear on Audible, Kobo, Apple, and other vendors about mid-October or so. So why don't you go ahead, Aaron, and tell us about your process of recording the actors for the audiobook?
Sure. Well, like Eugene was saying earlier, you know, I'm particularly fond of the audio medium for drama and for storytelling, and as Eugene said, you know, you're limited only by your imagination, and I think what's so wonderful about this was, you know, that these are quite intimate plays. And it's beautiful to have them just existing in the space, you know, between your ears and in your mind and coming alive like that. So it was thrilling. It was super fun. I mean, we also were doing it, you know, it is challenging in the middle of a pandemic, when performing arts is, you know, it's a very challenging medium to be doing anything, but we were able to do it, and had a fabulous cast of actors who were game to bring these stories to life. Something I did want to share too, that we haven't talked about as much yet, the playwriting guide that Eugene includes in the book as well. I can personally attest, since I have been his student since I was in high school, and wonderfully he has been my mentor ever since, giving me advice up until maybe only a few weeks ago. So I continually turn to him for that. But the playwriting guide, if you listen to it, it is truly the experience of being the next best thing to actually being in the room with Eugene is hearing him deliver this amazing playwright's guide, because it feels like what my experience was like. And you know, and talking about the writing on demand, I've had to do some of that myself, and I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't know that there's been anyone who has written about that before, and I think Eugene does a marvelous job of talking about that. But other than, you know, like being in a conference room with Eugene when I was in high school, and hearing the clink of Smarties on the table that he would often have in front of him as he was giving us feedback on stuff, the experience of him being in that room was magical for me, because I felt like I was a high school kid again, hearing this amazing advice given to me, and still learning and going, holy mackerel, I still know so little, and getting to hear all this amazing stuff. So wonderfully, you know, you get to hear so much of Eugene's voice on this on these audio recordings as well, and that was magical for me when I was a high school student, and it was no less magical for me a few months ago when we recorded this. So yeah, it was a delightful experience, and I think you're gonna be excited to hear these plays brought to life inside your imaginations by these actors.
No, well, thanks, Aaron. And I always announce things as they come along, as launches and as book releases, also audiobook releases on the Dervile and Uproot Facebook page. And so follow along with that. Just, you know, search for Dervile and you'll find all kinds of new information about what's going on with the books, including, you know, when the audiobook for No Harm Done will surface on audible.com. I'm going to swing it back to Eugene now, and I think he has an introduction that we'll all be really excited to hear.
Right, thank you. You know, I was just sitting there listening to Bill and Vin talk about science at a play launch. Are you kidding? I don't know if this has happened in the world ever. And then the other part of that is realizing how fortunate I was to work with such truly inspirational women as Crystal and Dagmar. My life is very rich when I realized that I had the opportunity to work with them and to think of the results that we have, but just for the pleasure of their friendship, it's so it's heartwarming. And then to see my favorite student ever having such a great career, being such a good person, a dad, finding ways to survive as an artist in these hellish times, Aaron, I'm so proud of you. So thank you all, appreciate it. So we're going to have a few little readings, and now if we can find them, could we bring in Grant and Ellison? June, have they fallen asleep?
No, we're here.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
June,
they're
have you? Oh, there you are.
Hi there.
Thanks, guys. Hi,
Hi.
how are you? So it says Grant Reddick and Allison Lynch, but it's actually the other way around. It's Allison Lynch and Grant Reddick, because you probably figured that out. Grant is what we call a treasure, I guess. He's been an actor. I dug out a little information from their day. His first professional gig was at Stratford Grant, I believe, in 1954. Yeah. And Allison was never my student at St. Mary's, but we were there at the same time. But Allison, why I wanted her to read Melody in this scene, was that when we did the little tour I mentioned before of the churches and whatnot, Allison was about 18, I think, and she was stage managing that production. And I popped by to see a read through, and I said to the director, it'd be nice if we had some little musical stings in between those scenes. And then Allison just piped up and said, oh, I'll find something. So I went back 2 or 3 days later, and there's this beautiful music playing between these scenes. And I said I wanted to buy the album, right? I said to Allison, where'd you find that music? It's really cool. He goes, oh, I just went home and wrote it and recorded it and brought it in. And that's at that point, I thought, wow, this is someone incredibly special. And this is an incredibly special cast, and you two are friends. So I thought that this casting worked out rather well. So how are you both?
Good.
Good.
Well, with
Doing good, Grant? You're in your beautiful home in Crescent Heights. Yeah, I love your house. The play, this might look more like a grandfather and granddaughter, but the play is actually a father and daughter. As I mentioned, the part that Allison's reading today was played by my former wife and the mother of my child, Hannah Stickland. By the way, Hannah, in Portugal, if you are watching, I should mention to you that, like everything I do, this is for you. I dedicated the book to my beautiful daughter. So what happens in the play is that Joe is living alone in a downtown apartment of a place probably like Calgary. Probably is Calgary, actually, because he complains about the people from Saskatchewan taking up all the parking spots outside his apartment. He's losing it. He's getting Alzheimer's, and Melody, his daughter, comes home to visit him, just to look in on, because she's going to move to Chicago, and she has no idea that he's got any kind of disability or debilitating disease. So as the play goes on, this is what she finds out. And then she has to make a decision over the course of the play, which a lot of people do, actually. Am I going to go off course a bit here in my own idea what my life should be to look after my dad, or should I just take off and put him in a home? It's a very real decision, I think, that people make. So in the first scene, they go through, and it becomes increasingly apparent that for the Grant's character, whose name is Joe Ballantyne, isn't totally in control of his right mind. But like I said before, when I read the monologue from the full-length version, is I wanted to give a sense of the brilliant mind that lurks beneath the surface of the dialogue. And so at the end of the first major scene between the two of them, I think Melody leaves, and then the spotlight just comes up on Joe, and he has a brief monologue. So Grant, could you read that for us?
Surely. Page 691 of Gray's Anatomy. There's a diagrammatic representation of the cells of the cerebellum. It's a strange looking drawing. If you hadn't found it in Gray's Anatomy, if you'd simply come across it with no idea of its context, you might well believe it was a diagrammatic representation of petroglyphs, like those carved by the Plains Indians in ancient times. Strange creatures, with a single eye at their center, many tentacles radiating outward, all seemingly engaged in some kind of ritual, searching perhaps for some kind of shelter or sanity. some sense of place and well-being in the uncaring world around them. Perhaps the first impulse towards mythology, religion. Over the years, the petroglyphs have been worn away by the elements until only the faintest impression is left. And all the depth and detail and meaning have all but vanished without a trace. Like the writing on the mind. The memories that fade with the passing years. And finally, all that is left is a smooth face of stone, revealing nothing, as we finally forget even ourselves.
Thank you, Grant. Oh, it's lovely to hear those words coming out of your mouth again. Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
The play continues on, and hijinks ensue, and they get down to, I guess, the scene where I think everything turns once and for all, and Melody has to make up her mind about what she's going to do. So this is, I don't know, called getting married at camp scene or whatever we call it. And and it starts with Melody, aka Allison, talking on the phone, which, Aaron, I tell my students, don't have phone calls on the stage, but I guess in this case, I thought it was warranted because the brother's never around, and she's trying to wonder, he's your dad too, kind of thing. So she talking to him, and then Joe would enter into the living room of their apartment. So are you guys ready with that scene?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Here goes. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, he's your father too, Michael. Yeah, I know how busy you are. Oh, I know. Listen to me. You don't think I have anything else to do right now? I'm in the middle of a move here, Michael. My stuff has been sent to Chicago, and what am I doing? Making cocoa and clipping articles from Architectural Review? I don't have, you amaze me. You are nothing but, yeah, I know you have kids. And that's the point. Wouldn't you want them to come and help you someday? Oh, man. You say that now. Yeah. You say that now. You know what? You know what you are? You are nothing but a spoiled, rotten, selfish little creep. You know that? That's all you are. You're just the worst person on the face of the earth. Forget it. Forget it. That's all I have. Forget it. This conversation is over. Pathetic bastard. Rotten little son of a...
You're here.
Yeah.
What a lovely surprise.
Is it?
Yes.
Good. That's good.
Yes.
Everything's good, isn't it, Dad?
Yes, it's good.
Yeah. Isn't it just a banner day?
You've been away, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been away. You know that. I've told you 12 times now.
Yeah, of course. Tell me,
What?
were you gone long?
Oh, for crime. Yes, I was gone 3 years.
Really?
Closer to 4.
Is that really?
Yes.
Oh, I think.
Yeah.
Where were you again? Was it the camp?
Camp?
You know the camp. What's the name of it again?
What camp?
The camp, the church camp, the Anglican church camp.
Harding?
That's it. Exactly. Harding, Camp Harding, in the hills, in what it means, the hills again, the Cypress Hills.
The Cypress Hills.
The Cypress Hills. Oh, beautiful spot. We sent you to that lovely camp there. We sent you that one time. Well, where was it?
Harding,
Yes,
Camp Harding.
yes, of course. That beautiful spot.
I wasn't at Camp Harding, Dad.
Were you not?
No, I was somewhere else. I was in Vancouver.
Oh,
Yes,
but not in
I was married, Dad.
married?
Yes. Remember, you gave me away.
You got married at camp?
No, not at camp. Since then.
Oh, I see. What was the name? I seem to have forgotten.
Camp Harding.
No, not the camp, the boy.
The boy I married?
Yes,
Charles.
Charles.
You called him Charlie.
Did I? Charlie. Oh, that's right, of course. Charlie boy. Good old Charlie with the funny eyes.
But we broke up.
Oh, did you?
I told you.
Things just don't last the way they used to.
That's why I came here, Dad. One of the reasons. Because we broke up. Because he tired me out. Bored me to tears until I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't stand Vancouver anymore. I can't stand this country anymore. I'm leaving. Well, I think I'm leaving. I'm supposed to start a job. I'm supposed to be somewhere else. And here we are talking about church camp. My God. You know, Dad, I don't know what to do here. Like, maybe I need your support. Maybe I need to lean on you for a change.
Oh, there.
I know the details slip away, but you could at least remember the big stuff, the life stuff. That wouldn't be asking too much, would it?
It's hard. It's hard, isn't it, dear?
Yeah. Even if you're not, you know, there's always doubt and uncertainty and regret. It's not easy.
Oh, there. I wouldn't worry, my dear. It'll be all right. Everything will be all right. Don't you worry about Charlie. You'll find a warm place to stay and someone to feed him. And after a few days, he'll realize he's not really at home and he'll make his way back. How do they do that? Their sense of smell, I suppose. It's truly remarkable how they managed to make their way back. Remember we saw that movie, what was it?
The Incredible Journey.
Oh, that was it. That was it. The Incredible Journey. Oh, fine movie. How they get those animals to, you know, act like that. It's incredible. Anyway, little one, don't you worry about Charlie. He'll come back. He always does.
And scene. Thank you. Boy, that's the saddest, funniest scene I ever wrote. It's absolutely hysterical and it's absolutely heartbreaking at the same time. Little Charlie. Thank you. Thank you, Allison, for being here. If we had done the big event, the big extravaganza, the $1 million show out on what do we call it, Container Park, Allison was going to dazzle us with, I don't know, some violin playing or maybe some singing, and we missed that today, but thanks for offering anyway, Allison.
No problem.
And, thank you for acting.
Thanks for
I think
having
it's my favorite line, how they get those animals to act like that. And there you are acting. It's got some bizarre meta-theatrical, self-representational thing going on. Wonderful. And then, so Grant, I'd asked you just to write the monologue that happens at the very beginning of the very last scene, okay? And I think you have that there. So if we could hear that now, that would be awesome.
He's been reading the Architectural Review, and he has Allison clipping articles out of it. And he finds this: the will of an epoch translated into space. Spandrels and mullions and I-beams, neurons and axons and synapses, a modulation in space beneath the glass surface of the skin. One searches for rhythmic regularity to one's work, one's life, all lightness and transparency, the Gothic and the classic fused into one, like the right brain and the left brain, creating the whole of the imagination, the will and the tension to hold these opposites, leading finally to serenity, unsullied by memory.
Thank you, Grant. Must have been taken in a ginkgo that week. I really love the writing in this play, if I do say so myself. And I'm so, Lori, thank you so much for publishing this, because I never thought it would happen. I'm not going to tell you how Closer and Closer Apart ends. You need to buy the book at Shelf Life Books and read it and find out for yourself. So we go from there. What we have next is one more reading from Grant, and the radio play of Fade to Light that I wrote for Dagmar and her crew. It's two people essentially sitting on a park bench in a rainstorm. It is discovered about halfway through the play that one of them is not sighted, as we say, blind. And he has that moment, and I think Dagmar alluded to this, of they seem to be getting along so well, and he's worried that if he tells her that he's blind, it'll be a deal breaker, as it sounds like it has been for many times in his life. But this remarkable young woman, who, by the way, Aaron Coates cast a blind actress in the role of the sighted character in that play, which I thought was a brilliant, ironic bit of casting. And she was such a lovely, is her name Allison too, Aaron?
Ashley.
I'm sorry, Ashley. Yeah, lovely actress. And boy, any of us in the audience can tell you that pursuing a career in the arts and theater is difficult. To do it, not being able to see what seems impossible, but I hope that she will get through. I hope everybody think, there's that meme on Facebook, it's not a competition, we can all do well, right? And so I have high hopes for her. Anyway, so they have at the end of the play, they're running across this big, if it were a film, it'd be a big park, like Prince's Island or something. The rain is lashing them, the thunder is coming down. And Grant, in this Hotel Arts production, the only one, played the narrator, read the narrator, I guess I would say. And at the end of the play, the narrator has some of my favorite writing in the play. So Grant, could you read the end of that play for us, please, sir?
Right. And so if we would see, even with our eyes shut, if we would see in our mind's eye, each of us in our own way, a young couple, so close to being all alone in the world, and yet so close to being perhaps alone no more, running hand in hand, haltingly and yet hurriedly traversing the great lawn of an urban park against a backdrop of swaying and rustling trees, a wind impeding their progress and the rain lashing against them. a rather rustic restaurant, soft lights gleaming into burrowed woods awakening. All the while their brief journey underscored by the sounds of the piano. Does it matter, after all, that they're just one small and insignificant, not even couple, swimming in a great sea of humanity? Does it matter that he can't see, or that she cares enough about the fortunes of a stranger to guide him across the great unknown expanse of lawn? It is, after all, the great blessing of humanity that hope will lie like a seed dormant and unseen, even in the most earnest of hearts. And yet, we must believe it never dies. Rather, it thrives, and so causes us to open our eyes. And as our vision fades into light, let us never stop seeing that there is hope and mercy in the world. Always. Still. And so we fade to light. End of play.
Thank you, Grant. What a honor to have you read my words again, and how lovely to see you again.
Your honor. I've championed this play for what is it, almost 30 years now since we did it?
Yeah.
I keep on
Known each other a long time.
Yeah.
I put on Facebook one day that you and I got to know each other smoking cigarettes backstage at the old Lunchbox Theater at Bow Valley Square, and everybody said how lucky I was, and I agree. I was lucky to get to know you.
Well, I'm still smoking.
Yeah, good
I'm
man.
still feeling lucky that I know you, and very lucky that you're still.
You're 90 now, aren't you?
Hmm?
Are you worried about, smoking? You're not going to make it to 91. You
Well,
quit.
I went to my
Yeah,
found
quit.
out that I had a heart attack when I was in my 50s.
Oh, really?
He got really quite excited, and he asked me who my heart specialist was, and I said, I've forgotten. And he said, well, when did you last have your blood test? And I said, oh, a long, long time ago. So he was really nervous, and he sent me to a specialist, a lovely man, who said to me, are you still smoking? And I thought, oh, I concealed it so well. I scrubbed my fingernails and I stopped smoking for the day. And so I said, well, yes, I am. So he said, well, I think at your age, perhaps it's best you not try to quit. It'll be too hard on you. So I have a license to continue to smoke, thankfully.
Which I am faithfully following.
Good for you. We'll need to pray together.
Oh, it's just a treat. And I know that any people, lots from the Calgary theater community who have known your work and love you like we all do, are delighted to hear your voice and see your wonderful face again today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eugene.
And thank you to Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grant and Allison. It was just delightful. If you don't mind me interjecting, one of the most beautiful things that I've seen all day is watching the little video snippets here at the top of the screen, listening to the performances, because there was very, very well concentrated and active listening, very strong emotion coming from our participants today. And I think that many of the scenes that we saw resonated with us. These are diseases that are
Anyway, I
so
got one
common
more.
in our world.
I got one more.
All right, let's hear it.
Were you signing off on me? Because this is a scene I'm going to read. And
No, that's
because
great. I just see we're getting close to 3:30.
I know.
But I'm very happy. I
I'm
said, let's see what happens. So
going to do
Eugene,
this super fast.
No, you
Yeah,
don't have
but
to do it
I'm
fast.
gonna
Do
do
it
it cartoon
at your
voice.
leisure. Do it as an actor would.
I can't shortchange Ben and I can't shortchange Crystal. So I've just got a page from No Harm Done. I mean, sorry, No Harm Done. What is this? The Last Dance. Okay, and this is something I rarely do, but I'm going to read both characters. So I guess you'll figure it out. So rock star. He's given an honorary doctorate at his university in their hometown, which he got lucky at the convocation with the registrar, actually. So he folded up he didn't want to carry it around all night. So he took it out of the frame, folded it up. He's been carrying it in his back pocket, presumably of leather pants. And she is just outraged that he's treated this like that. And she says, it's not always about you, it doesn't always have to be about you. There are other people drawing breath on this planet, not just you. And he says, hey, it's my degree. I can do with it what I want. I could burn it if I felt like it. And she said, you just don't get it, do you? And he says, what's to get? And she says, most of us, almost all of us, 99.9% of us lead pretty ordinary lives. Mundane by your standards. We get very little recognition, if any. Things like this don't happen to us. They never do. I'm at the point in my life where just walking into the bathroom is a major accomplishment. There's no one going to give me a degree for that, but they do it for you, and rightfully so. You deserve it. And because we all feel we know you, even people who don't, but those of us who actually do, who grew up with you in the old neighborhood, we share it with you. We share your achievements, your fame even, because we know that nothing like that will ever happen to us. We take it seriously. And if you don't, then it invalidates our experience, maybe even our lives. He says, well, if it means that much, you can just have it. She goes, it's not what it means to me that's the issue here. It should mean something to you. This is your hometown. You're from here. This should mean something. What follows is, I think, the most poignant little moment that I never wrote. And I remember Krista taking the degree, but because of the Parkinson's and her control of her hand, she's trying to smooth the parchment, but she couldn't. And she held that moment for a while, and everyone in the audience could just see through that scene the problems that she's having. And then she says, I would try to iron the creases out, but I can't even hold a damn iron anymore. And then he gets it from that point on. It's kind of a moment where the actor just took control of the script. Probably the wonderful director we had, Joe Norman, helped with that moment, but it was one I was very proud of. And that's all I'm going to read from that play. And that's all I'm going to read. That's all we're going to hear. It's hard to follow Grant Reddick.
Well, actually,
Lori,
what we're going
back
to
to you.
hear, there aren't a lot of, well, there really aren't any questions. I think everybody was just, enjoying a Sunday afternoon and not really wanting to think very hard. But I would like to read a few of the comments. The comment that I made, though, with my email address on it, laureen.sheba@derval.com, is for a door prize. And I'm just opening it up to people. If you want to email me, I will send you a door prize, and it might be a surprise. You email me with your address, and I'll send you something. Eugene, it's really lovely, these comments. Morag said, I'm completely inspired. Linda said, wow. Hilda Chassia said, this heartfelt, brilliant launch is food for the essence of our being. I can hardly wait to buy your book, Eugene.
Nice.
Roberta says, so beautiful, Eugene, Allie and Grant. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Wonderful reading, Grant and Allison. Beautiful words, Eugene, Laura Parkin said. Morag a little earlier, probably in response to something else, just said stunning. Thank you all for the story, for bringing such important subject matter to life. Art touches my soul, she said. That's very, very special. It's big. Barbara, thank you so much. This has been inspiring, informative, and entertaining. That's Barbara Miller-Biles. Joe Norman Shaw, who directed, I guess, Closer and Closer.
No, he directed The Last Dance.
The Last Dance, yes, of course. Beautiful job, Grant and Allison. Great script, Eugene. Will Lawrence, beautiful representation of the complications of memory loss.
Lori, could we just thank Will for trying to get the container space? Will Lawrence is the former manager at Shelf Life, and he was driving the, to get us in that cool space outdoors, because they were worried about social distancing inside. And Will, thank you for everything you did, and we'll do it next time, okay?
Yes, let's. One last, two last comments. Johanna McEachran said, gorgeous, simply gorgeous, she said. And Roberta Maurer Phillips, she says, weeping now, Eugene. I remember the production well, having been at Lunchbox Theater at the time.
Yeah, she was
So,
that's Roberta Maurer Phillips and David Lorraine, old theater friends, would have been watching this, and I'm sure they were super thrilled to see Grant again.
And people hung in so well. I mean, we had 26, 27, and now, we're still at 31 participants, and I want to thank everybody so much for attending. The next book launch will be for Yethka, which is Yethka language in Yethka country, the First Nation formerly known as the Stony. So I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much. Eugene, you might want to say.
Well, I just want to thank everybody who was involved today and everybody who was involved with the first productions of these plays. Playwrights are only as good as the people we work with, and we're dependent on good actors and good directors and editors and everything else. And so I'm very blessed where I sit in Calgary. So thank you, everyone. You know who you are. And Lori, thank you for bringing this book into the world. I realize today is just how important it is. And like Dagmar, no, as Crystal was saying, we need more of this type of thing, right? Yeah, thank you, Lori.